In the gleaming heart of Manhattan, where ambition brushed shoulders with luxury and people walked faster than their thoughts, billionaire Gregory Langston sat alone at the corner table of a modest cafe called Delilah's, his coat still damp from the rain, his eyes hollow despite the opulence wrapped around him, the world outside buzzing with purpose while his soul felt like an echo chamber of regrets. He wasn't supposed to be here. Gregory didn't do diners, didn't do ordinary. But something about the hand-painted sign and the fogged-up windows had drawn him in that morning like a forgotten melody. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the weight of a dream gone too far, because while the world knew him as the real estate magnate worth over $7 billion, the man who could buy city blocks with a phone call, Gregory was, in this moment, just another tired soul looking for something real, something unpolished, something that didn't ask for anything except presence. And yet, even in this humble place where the scent of coffee and eggs danced in the air, his mood was heavy, his thoughts darker than the storm clouds outside, and when the waitress approached, young, probably mid-20s, her apron wrinkled, her ponytail undone, but her eyes kind in a way that startled him, he couldn't stop himself from lashing out. "Do you stare at all your customers like that, or am I just lucky?" He snapped, his tone cutting, cruel in a way that startled even him, but she didn't retreat, didn't flinch. She simply placed the coffee in front of him with calm grace and said, in a voice as steady as rain, "Sir, sometimes the ones serving others are the ones who've suffered most, but we choose kindness anyway." And the moment the words left her lips, something cracked in Gregory, not visibly, not with tears or a gasp, but like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples across a surface too long undisturbed. For a moment, he sat stunned, staring at the steam curling up from his cup, her sentence echoing louder than his own conscience ever had, because in that one simple truth was everything he had forgotten, about humanity, about humility, about the power of choosing empathy even when the world gives you 1,000 reasons not to. She turned and walked away, back to her tasks, back to her tables, leaving him to sit with his shame, and as the minutes ticked by and the cafe filled with quiet conversation and the clatter of silverware, Gregory found himself unable to stop watching her, not because of her looks or any shallow reason, but because of her strength, her composure, the way she made every customer feel seen, even the ones like him who didn't deserve it, and something deep inside him stirred, something long buried. Under years of board meetings, hostile takeovers, and empty congratulations from people who only saw his net worth, not his loneliness, after finishing a breakfast he barely tasted, he left $100 tip, not out of guilt, but something more complex. And stepped out into the rain without an umbrella, letting the cold water soak his designer suit as if it could wash away the bitterness caked on his soul, and for the first time in a decade, he walked through the city not as a titan of industry, but as a man searching for himself. The next morning, he came back, not out of curiosity, but necessity, and there she was again, the same tired eyes, the same gentle smile, and this time he didn't bark or complain. He simply ordered coffee and asked her name, and when she said, "Claire," he said it aloud, softly, as if trying to etch it into something sacred. Day by day, he returned, sometimes staying for hours, sometimes just long enough for a coffee refill, but each time learning something new. Not just about Claire, but about himself, about the human condition, about how easily people miss the pain in others because they're too busy hiding their own, and through snippets of conversation, he learned she was studying psychology at night, working 2 jobs to support her younger brother who had cerebral palsy, that her mother had passed away from cancer 2 years ago and her father had walked out when she was 9, and yet, despite every weight the world had thrown on her back, Claire smiled, served, encouraged, and reminded every person she met that kindness was a choice, not an accident, not a weakness, but a decision made daily, often in silence, often without thanks. Gregory, who had once measured people by the size of their wallets, found himself speechless at her resilience, her grace, and he began to think about Eliza. His first love, the woman he let go because ambition whispered sweeter lies than loyalty, the woman who had said similar things to Claire, who had once worked in a diner to put herself through school, who had looked at him with the same eyes Claire now did, eyes that saw through him, not just at him. Haunted by this parallel, Gregory began to change, not in grand, performative gestures, but in quiet ones. He called his estranged son for the first time in 4 years and left a voicemail asking for lunch, He visited his mother's old nursing home and donated enough to fund 3 new medical staff, and when Claire once mentioned that her brother dreamed of seeing the ocean but had never left the city, Gregory arranged a weekend trip to the coast for them, anonymously booking a wheelchair-accessible hotel room and leaving tickets with the front desk under Angels Incorporated, so she wouldn't suspect him. He kept coming back, not as a billionaire, but as Gregory. The man who was learning to listen, to feel, to care again, and one day, after months of shared silences and meaningful conversations, Claire asked him gently, "Why do you come here?" And he replied, voice thick with emotion, "Because this is the only place I remember who I wanted to be," and she didn't respond with words, just reached across the table and squeezed his hand, and in that moment, he knew he was no longer alone. Weeks turned into months, and when Claire graduated with honors, Gregory was in the back row, clapping harder than anyone, tears slipping silently down his cheeks as her name was called, because he saw not just a young woman overcoming odds, but the embodiment of the compassion he had forgotten existed. After the ceremony, he handed her a small velvet box, not flashy, not expensive looking, and inside was a single silver key with a note that read, "For your future clinic. The one the world desperately needs," and attached was the deed to a small office space in Brooklyn, already renovated, with her name on the door, Claire Thomas, Trauma Counseling, and she broke down in tears, holding him not like a benefactor, but like family, whispering through sobs, "No one's ever believed in me like this," and Gregory, voice trembling, whispered back, "Because no one ever taught me how, until you." And from that moment forward, their lives were entwined not by money or charity, but by transformation, by a second chance given and received. Claire went on to build a center that helped hundreds, kids, veterans, survivors, all of whom were touched by her story and her strength, and Gregory sat on the board, not in suits or ties, but in jeans and sneakers, smiling at the progress of others with pride he once reserved for stock prices. He never stopped visiting Delilah's, even when Claire moved on, and whenever someone new would serve him and ask if he wanted the usual, he'd smile and say, "Just the coffee, and a little kindness, if you have some to spare," and he'd tip generously, not for service, but as a thank you to every Claire still waiting tables, still carrying invisible weights, still choosing compassion. And years later, when a young journalist wrote a piece titled, "The Billionaire Who Found His Soul at a Diner," Gregory agreed to one interview, sitting beneath the awning of that same cafe, sipping coffee as rain tapped gently on the window, and when asked what changed him, what made him walk away from boardrooms and balance sheets, he said, "A waitress once told me something that cracked my world open. She said the ones serving others have often suffered the most, but they choose kindness anyway. And that sentence saved my life," and the article went viral not because of the money he gave, but because of the heart he found, and Claire, now a leading trauma therapist, kept a framed copy of it on her wall, not for the fame, but to remind herself and her clients that no act of kindness, no matter how small, ever goes to waste, and that even the harshest voices sometimes just need one gentle truth to wake them up. So when people ask what power really looks like, what wealth truly means, they don't point to skyscrapers or luxury jets, they point to a rainy morning, a bitter man, and a waitress with one sentence that changed everything, proving once and for all that kindness isn't just a virtue, it's the most powerful force on earth.